Hello. Hi, and welcome to an interview with Wynn, VioWynn. I posted some information about her on a Debt Free Justice page. If you are tuning in, I am edxi. I am the social media content creator for the week, and it is also Trans Awareness Week. So we're just gonna get a little into, this interview. Wynn is a 16-year-old trans girl from Tennessee who enjoys music, gaming, and streaming. She loves metal, shooters, and sandbox games, and talking to her community. Welcome, Wynn.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for, being here. So I just want to, get right into it. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your name, like the favorite things you do in your pastime other than, the things that were already mentioned, age and pronouns?
Yeah, well, I'm Wynn, as you mentioned. I'm 16 and I use she, her pronouns. And in my free time, I mostly just do the things that I mentioned, like playing guitar, like listening to music, playing video games, talking to my friends, talking to like my community online. And it's cool. Yeah, it's kind of the main sort of stuff I do.
It's cool. To be a young trans girl in this day and age.
Oh, God.
So it's Trans Awareness Week, and at the end of the week is Trans Day of Remembrance. What does this week mean for you?
Well, basically, it's just a week where like our issues are not put to the forefront. We live in a very transphobic society. They'll probably never be truly put to the forefront, but it's a week where like we can have a way of getting our issues a little bit closer to the forefront. We can try to spread awareness for our plight, for like a lot of the transphobic policies that are being passed. Like there was a bill introduced on Wednesday here in Tennessee that would ban social transition, not just for minors, but for anyone. It means a lot to me, just because it allows us to, come together as a community, focus on the issues that are most important, most pressing, and just generally try to, fight a lot of the transphobia. And then Trans Day of Remembrance, I don't know, it just hurts to think about, honestly.
Yeah.
So
I feel that. Yeah, this week is a lot. Some people have attempted to try to flip the script of the week and make it about more awareness, because when it initially, specifically Trans Day of Remembrance, when it initially started, it was so much focused on the deaths of trans women, and a lot of times when you center the tragedy, it doesn't show us who we actually really are as people. So, I think there were efforts to like change it up, like calling it Trans Day of Resilience. And that was a few years ago, because now even that, it's like people are like, well, why do we have to be resilient? Can you tell me a little bit about the events leading up to the arrest incident? For people who don't know, this all started around you needing to use the restroom, right?
yeah, pretty much.
Why were the police involved?
Okay, so the entire situation started either in August or like a little bit before August started last year.
Mm-hmm.
I basically sent some emails to my school saying, hey, I'm going to use the correct restroom. There have been too many stories of like people being, sexually assaulted and raped and all that sort of thing in the restrooms at that school. So I did not feel safe using the men's restroom.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So I went ahead and emailed them about that. Then they told me that I had to use the men's restroom. And then I like kept insisting that I was going to use the correct restroom. And then basically like, I think 3 weeks into the school year, they started, pressuring me and like my legal parents into putting me in an online program, which they were acting like would be an education. They were acting like I'd have teachers and I'd have like the resources they were quizzing and testing on and all that sort of thing. And it'd just be like an education, but online. As it turns out, they just didn't want a trans student in the school, so they put me in their online program, but didn't give me teachers for most of my classes. Like for I think 3 of them, there were teachers that you would meet with like once either every 2 weeks or every month. I honestly forget at this point. But basically, it just was not enough to be a real education. So my options were doing it, wasting my life and failing, or not doing it, enjoying life and trying to pressure the school into, letting me have an education. So I just kind of gave up because I didn't really have a choice in the matter. So then because of that, I was found truant by the court and then put into foster care for that. I was like a gift of the court to the foster care people. But yeah, basically, like I was trying to convince the school to put me back in school so I can get an education, and I wanted an education, and they just didn't want to give me an education because they didn't want a trans student like me who's like very open about being trans in the school. And this year, I've been using the correct restroom, and no one's batted an eye. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah, it's. I mean, it
seems like they gave up
in a. In a funny, haha, this is fascism kind of way.
Yeah, fair.
So police were involved when you got arrested. But was that like? Were you actually like cuffed and everything?
Okay, so I'm assuming you're referring to the time when they came in when I was like on stream, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that was right after the call with the court. Like we had a Zoom court where I was told I'd be put in foster care. I guess they just thought I'd be suicidal or something, so they had police come for a wellness check. And then like the police started, getting really angry at me, like threatened to take me to like a mental hospital. Like actually they initially threatened to take me to one where they took me before where I was sexually assaulted when I wasn't suicidal. They just like, I don't really know why they took me there, but they took me there and then I got sexually assaulted because of it.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So then they were like yelling at me the entire time. When I started crying, they were like, "No, you are fake crying," even though I had tears like streaming down my face. So I don't know. They came in for a wellness check to make sure that I was unwell, I guess. But then they came back later in the day to actually take me to foster care. But I was never like put in cuffs or anything like that.
Okay. Well, that's I guess the most helpful thing. Not putting, young people in cuffs when they're, like, that's interesting that the response was the way it was. And it seems like police never really know how to respond in ways that don't actually escalate, which is, the ongoing issue from like, for a long time now. So you said you were in foster care. You're currently in foster care right now.
No, I am not currently in foster care.
Okay.
I'm with my legal parents who adopted me when I was about 3 months old. But then I was put into foster care and taken away from them for about a month and a half, and then now I'm back with them.
Right. Okay. That's really wild. I'm glad that you can at least be yourself. I applaud you for being so open and truthful about your transness, because I have no idea how that would have been. I think we all kind of like wish we would have transitioned younger, but we have no idea how our lives would be affected if like we transition earlier or like, so yeah, no, I applaud that bravery and courage. You've been adopted since you said 3 years old.
Or 3 months old.
3 months old. Okay. In terms of that system, like how long were you in foster care for? Like, did they remove you from your adopted parents?
Well, I was taken from my adoptive parents on I think April 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I was brought back with them in like early to mid-June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What was that experience like for you?
Well, sometimes I didn't get food for days at a time, which was fun.
What?
Yeah, no, they just kind of didn't bother giving me food all the time, and like they were kind of like everyone in the foster care system was kind of like extremely mean to me. So I kind of just didn't want to ask for food because I was worried they'd yell at me, and I was already in a really bad mental state. So I kind of just ended up not eating for days at a time.
Wow.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, for the most part, I just like spent the entire time when I was in foster care just like on my phone trying to, just ignore the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But then I mean, it wasn't always possible to just ignore it. Like, when I was like being moved around and all, because I was moved around like a lot because I wasn't supposed to be in the foster home during the day for some reason. They
Mm,
never told me why, but they just like didn't want me in the foster home during the day, I guess. So they had me like go to like different offices. There's like a church and stuff. Like, I don't know, it was weird. But then like one day there was a security guard that decided to sit with me when I was in the office because they heard like all the other people misgendering and dead naming me.
mm-hmm.
And they were like, oh shit, that person must be trans. And they came in and
Mm,
sat with me and told me about it. And, that really does line up with like the rest of my experiences because like people were like fairly often just dead naming me on calls when I was like in the car or like misgendering me and all that sort of thing.
right.
Yeah. And then like even further than that, they got my insurance changed to my dead name, which hasn't been my legal name for like, or at that point, it had been my legal name for nearly a year.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I didn't know that they could do that
I didn't
without
either.
your consent, but I'm not surprised that yeah, the state or being a ward of the state for that moment in time can really uh like you are like ward of the state basically means property of
Yeah.
the state. And I was in foster care when I was a child, and I know how scary that situation is because you hear so many stories about foster care and foster parents. And did you like you were assigned a social worker? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And like how was your relationship with the social worker?
Kind of tense. Like we didn't really
Yeah.
see eye to eye on much. And they're like then related to them on June 1st, I had an HRT appointment. And I was
Mm-hmm.
late to that, like to the point where they had to like they were going to cancel my appointment until I mentioned, "Oh, hey, I'm in foster care. This is completely out of my control." Then I guess they took pity on me and said like they'd
Mm-hmm.
give me another appointment that day. So I had to just sit in there for like a couple hours because my foster care or my social worker just didn't want to take me, I guess. So that she was like really late to take me.
We are at the mercy of bureaucrats. It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, things have not changed in foster care industry for about 20 years because similar to you, yeah, I was in foster care, and it's kind of like a unspoken kind of well-known fact. I grew up in Hawaii, Honolulu, and it's kind of a well-known fact to just not trust those people who are like basically kidnapping young like indigenous children and putting them into foster care. And I think for me, the miscommunication was well, there wasn't any communication between myself and the social worker. They were doing everything in my best interest, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, nothing. It seems like nothing has changed because like I had absolutely no trust in my social worker, and I feel for the kids who still don't because in a lot of ways, like how I viewed it and how I learned to be distrustful of social workers and foster care was, these people are, it's an apparatus where they are being paid commission for the children that they're collecting. So, like, any kind of care that you might be expecting kind of goes out the window. Like, if you have money
Yeah.
being the sole reason behind they're having foster children. I don't know if you agree with the foster care. I guess, yeah. Do you agree with the foster care system? And Do you think there's other ways communities can respond to youth experiencing problems at home via poverty, neglect, or abuse that don't involve the state, i.e., the courts, juvenile justice system, and police?
Well, I definitely don't agree with the foster care system and the way it's currently done.
Right.
um, but I mean, it's the sort of system where I think that if the government really wanted to, they might be able to overhaul it and make it usable. But I don't know. Really, it would be extremely difficult, if possible at all. But then, yeah, there are definitely other ways communities can respond to youth issues. I mean, like when I was put into foster care, I mean, I had something similar to that, or similar to what I'm thinking for that. So there's this woman that reached out to me. Her name was Tessa, and she's kind of like taken on a little bit of a mentor figure in my life, kind of like what a mother is to most people, because I don't have that in my legal mother. Like my legal mother, my legal father are like very like unaccepting. They like do things like tell me to kill myself. Like my legal mother has told me to kill myself like 4 times in the last year.
Oh, dear.
And that's when she knew I was like going through depressive episodes, partially because of how she acts towards me. But yeah, so then when I was in foster care, Tessa reached out to me, and then I mean, like we kind of even made some like ideas like for like me moving in with her at some point, and that didn't go through because Jamie started calling her a pedophile and all that sort of thing, and like Tessa got kind of scared about Jamie, but we still talk and it's cool. But yeah, I think that like if people want to, they can just accept children into their lives if children are in a bad situation. I think communities can solve the foster care system a lot better than the foster care system can.
100% agree with you. There's something said about the history of foster care and the history of the state intervening with young people or children in ways that are kind of like related to like proprietary sentiments or that children are property. I think personally, being a person of color, Black, Indigenous, Asian person, I think like there's a lot of trauma related to obviously the state's involvement with our lives. So I appreciate your perspective in saying that, because yeah, definitely people have like you look at the ballroom scene, for example, young children who are discarded, or finally having it, with um, their parents and not wanting to be involved in the foster care system for obvious reasons, going to where you are not abused and going into building your own kind of families. That's like the history of like queer and trans people. So do you have any like favorite public or popular celebrity trans people you like look up to in media or whatever?
Well, I mean, of course, there's Couples. Uh, she's kind of awesome. I like her a lot.
Okay.
And that's partially because of how she responded to the foster care thing. Like she like kind of is
Yeah.
the reason that situation blew up. And she's always just been really nice to me and really cool. So I look up to her. And then there's also like Hunter Schafer, who's been like insanely successful in the modeling industry and then now as an actress.
Mhm.
Like even though she's trans, and that like I don't know, it's just really inspiring to me.
Yeah. What I really appreciate about the trans people, trans community, is how connected we are. We're literally every single person is just like a degree away from any other trans person, because we represent such a small fraction of like the entire population. So it's really pretty, it gets pretty tight knit.
Yeah,
Um and you do you ID as a gamer?
I do.
Um, so do you think trans representation in gaming is like helpful to, you know, trans movements, like trans rights, what have you? And then does it also depend on the game?
Well, yeah, it definitely depends on the game. Like,
Okay.
generally in games, as long as there's like a character who is like not completely awful, like who's trans, and that's great. Like in GTA, like if the only trans representation was like I don't know, like sex workers that you're supposed to just beat up in the game, well then that's bad representation. But then if you have a
Mm-hmm.
game like Celeste, where like the hero of the story is trans, or you have like a side character who's trans and it's not made a big deal out of, and it contributes to the normalization of trans people. And games are like a predominantly cis thing because most things are predominantly cis. So if
Mm-hmm.
we can get more trans people in a normal situation in the eyes of cis people, then well, that could help normalize it more, and that would be good. And it can help a lot with like getting less transphobic views in people. I said that really weirdly.
It's fine. I think that's really important to have not only trans representation, but also like even perhaps developers, like the development, you know,
Oh yeah,
people who are
definitely.
making these games being trans, because then it would have like an actual, a real, you know, representation. Whereas like I think one of the games, like I've always, you know, I've always really loved Fighter. Street Fighter before pre transition was like my, like I would always choose like the girl characters, and it was just so obvious. And then I would slay with these girl characters, and I go to arcades and guys like, you know, these like adults when I was a child, they would be like this kid is like beating us with nothing but girl, and it was so awesome. But that same Street Fighter recently, they came out with they finally made came out with a trans one of the trans characters. Um and it's coming out, I guess it's coming out this with Street Fighter 6. And yeah, there's just more, you know, we're not going anywhere. There's like more, and
Yeah.
we actually have always been here despite what people have communicated. Is just a lot more, you know, representation. um so related to your current situation, what are the things you wish adults around you or adults in general could do better for trans youth like yourself?
Just generally accepting us for who we are and who
Mm,
we say we are, and then not just assuming that we're all like rapists and stuff, because you know, as with every population, except if the population is rapists, most of us are not rapists, contrary to popular belief.
right. Yeah, I think it's really fascinating that, you know, these kind of like more conservative leaning people have these arguments regarding, you know, trans people being groomers or rapists or pedophiles, when like, have you looked at like every single existing institution with power? Like, have you looked at marriage lately? Like, it's actually still legal by way of specific court orders for children as young as 12 and 11 to be married. Child child marriage is still legal in about 44 states by way of specific court orders. And I think it's really fascinating that people are trying to flip the script and say that transgender, nonconforming, intersex, LGBTQ people are these pedophiles, when like that's their institution. Like that is their institution, has existed for literally centuries. And it's like wild that like, wait, like queer people just were made, like were able to be legal, like have legal marriages, like just in the last decade. This stuff is like centuries old, and like child marriage is still legal. So like, it's like, focus on yourself, please. Anywho, um, as you grow older, like as you get older, what are the things that you're wanting? or even
Uh,
meeting?
well, I mean, for me, mostly, I just want to, find more, friends, find more accepting people, just kind of have the best support system I can. And then, I mean, what I want to do when I'm like older is be a lawyer, which is part of the
Mm,
reason why debt-free justice is kind of interesting to me,
okay.
because they do focus on the legal stuff. So,
Right, right, right. Yeah, no, definitely. I'm hoping that uh you can get more in contact with the org. And obviously that your situation gets better. It's not okay that, even though yeah, it's not okay to be in a bad situation, but knowing that there's worse situations, so you're kind of coerced to have to stay in the bad situation. And I'm just hoping that soon you can get out of that situation where like you're experiencing this kind of harm, and frank that's abusive, to continuously disparage trans youth like that. And I also, you know also on the same token, feel for being really afraid to go anywhere else, because like I said, when I was, younger, there were a few queer and trans people that came into foster care, and people really treated them really terribly. And that was almost like a thing to me, like a thing that I internalized, like, oh, okay, like let me hide my femininity and let me not be so, open. Um, so I'm hoping things end up uh, getting better. But yeah, speaking of debt-free justice, are there things in this specific organization that's trying to abolish debt fees and fines for youth that are caught up in the juvenile justice system? Are there specific issues that you want to see orgs like Debt Free Justice tackle or focus on?
Uh, well, I mean, with debt-free justice, I honestly haven't had too much of a chance to look into them too in depth. I mean, I've looked around their website for like an hour or so, but just trying to like see everything I can. But it seems like they already have like a pretty, good idea of what they want to do, and they already like have a whole lot on their plate with trying to, help with,
Mm,
fees and fines in the court system. Like, I don't know. It just seems like
yeah.
they already have a lot to do. So I think they're already doing more than enough.
Hmm. Well, thank you so so much. That concludes our interview. And please stay tuned, everyone, for upcoming, conversations. Wynn's all of her information is going to be linked in the description of this interview. So please check her out and support her. And yeah, I hope that when you're safe, and I see a future for you.
Well, yeah, thank
So
everyone for watching.